Can you hear me? Okay.
Hi, Jason. We can hear you.
Hi. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself again.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect, Jason. Thank you so much for getting us started, checking the sound. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andreas Sigurdsson, and I'm from Myanmar and working together with NPC here for tonight's webinar. So we will just slowly get started now. And the topic for this week is executive loneliness during COVID-19. So before we jump into the talk itself with our speaker, Nick, I would love if you all can just share your name and company in the chat box. Jump in, tell who you are so that me, Nick, and everyone in here can see. It's nice to see who's listening, who's joining. So just feel free to share whenever you want. So today, or in fact tonight, what we're going to do is that we're going to focus on a webinar and a topic that people don't really like to talk about. So as an executive, I think most of you are quite aware that you're often alone with few people to talk to about what you're facing. Right now with the COVID-19, it's not only the physical isolation we are facing, but also the crisis. We're facing firing people, our staff is suffering, companies are losing money, and so on. All this puts a very heavy weight on an executive's shoulder. This is a topic that Nick Jonsson will jump into. So Nick is a fellow Swede from Sweden, but he's based in Singapore. And he has dedicated a lot of his time and effort to raise awareness, but also eliminating the stigma around this topic of executive loneliness. In fact, when he, as a managing director of EGN, the Executives Global Network in Singapore, he identified that all these feelings of isolation and depression, all these personal struggles that he himself had to grapple with and conquer, are so much more common than we normally think. In fact, the modern work culture we have today is very focused on achievements, while in reality, there are thousands of people all over the world suffering in silence and denial. And this is a topic that we're very happy to see all of you here to listen to, and we are very proud to have Nick coming here and sharing this. And before we're handing over to Nick himself to start introducing his presentation, I would like to hear your opinion. I'd like to hear what you think about this topic by asking you 2 polls. So if you're moving over to the first poll, this poll is about how are you feeling right now? Is the COVID-19 stressing you out? So you should have a poll in front of you pretty much right now, where you can select an option. We can see how it's going. So we have half of the people voted so far. So you can see that most people feel it's stressing them out. Maybe one more. Great. So thank you so much for sharing your opinion here. And we can see that we are at 53% is in fact feeling a little stressed out. Another 33% very stressed out. I think it's very, very, very normal. Then let's move to the second poll. So the second poll is about, is the COVID-19 making you feel lonely? So let's see what you think. Please share your opinion here. Good. I think you're all getting quite warm in the whole polling. And we can see that, in fact, the 60% is, in fact, feeling a little lonely. And I think just sharing this, just bringing it up for discussion is a very important process. But I'm not the professional in this. I think we're very lucky tonight to have Nick here joining us. So I think without any further ado, I think I would just like to hand over the word to Nick Jonsson himself to take over and share this very interesting topic. Over to you, Nick.
Yes, thank you very much, Andreas, for the warm introduction, and thanks for taking through the poll there. So indeed, we can see that people are stressed out also in Myanmar, and people also feeling lonely in Myanmar, at least the majority on the call today. And that is exactly what we see also in Singapore, where I'm based, and it's also the temperature of the world right now. So it's a great chance for us to connect to each other and also to discuss when we're not feeling okay. It's okay to say that we are not okay, and it's very important to admit to ourselves and to someone else when we are not feeling okay, so that we can help each other. So my name is Nick Jonsson, and I'm currently doing a study and a survey where I'm writing a book on executive loneliness. Today I will share with you my journey and many other people and executives, especially, that I come across along this journey that started about 2 years ago. I'm lucky to be alive today. I almost died 2 years ago. Luckily, I made some important choices and I had some luck. I came out of a deep depression and I survived. Unfortunately, a friend and colleague of mine was not so lucky. He made other choices and he is not with us today. I will share his story with you today, and I will also share mine so that you can also learn from the differences in the choices that we made, so that you, your friends, your family, and your colleagues can also survive. So let me tell you my story. The year is 2008, and I live and work in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. I'm working in a cosmetic company as the national sales manager. I believe I'm doing quite okay in the job. I've been promoted twice, and just as I have a new managing director, boss I'm reporting to, I'm laid off. I come home one day very sad to share this news with my ex-wife. Just as I share the news, she tells me, Nick, I'm pregnant. So it's just like out of a movie for me. My whole world collapsed in one moment. As you might know, when you're living in a foreign country, working as an expat, where you don't have your friends and family with you, you live in a house provided by the company. Everything is provided by the company. So I lost everything just in that afternoon. At the same time, I'm finding out I'm about to become a father. The stress that hit me, the anxiety that hit me was horrendous. I went in a shock. I didn't know what to do. That is the first time in my life when I really was hitting a very dark period mentally. I managed to come out of this period eventually. I got myself a new job, another company also in Ho Chi Minh City. And I did well for this company. I worked for them in Ho Chi Minh City almost 4 years when I got promoted to one of the bigger branches of them in Jakarta. At this stage, my son was almost 5 years old. We relocated over to Jakarta. And just when my son had started in his new school in Indonesia, I was told by my new boss over in Jakarta that I was to let go. This time, the company was sold and a lot of us was redundant. It might sound familiar to the stories you're reading in the news about what's happening around the world today. So here I was in a new country, again without a job, and again I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Now I had a son, 5 years old, and suddenly I found myself without job, and again I was going to lose the house. What to do? I thought of the first natural instinct, which was to protect my ex-wife and my son. And I said, go back to Sweden where we come from, and I will see what I can do. So this is typical a male in a panic mode. We think we are so strong. We should be strong. We're trying to show the family that we can do it by ourselves. So they went back to Sweden. So I was by myself trying to figure out what I should do here in Indonesia. I jumped from assignment to assignment in some short-term jobs, and I got a really good job where I came in and I had a huge package, the biggest salary I ever had in my life, most likely the best package I ever will get in my life. But within 1 year of the job, I was so insecure inside me that I was just every day waiting and for someone to fire me, because the last 2 jobs, even though I did well, I lost my job. So I was sure that it was going to happen again. I didn't trust my boss. I didn't trust the company. So before I knew it, I resigned from the company myself because I couldn't handle to be fired one more time. When I did that, they were completely in shock. They said, Nick, you're doing so well. We had plans to promote you. We can give you any job you want. But the stories that have been playing in my head for some time was that I'm not good enough. And I told myself that I was not going to succeed, and I didn't. That's when I hit the depression again. I had no hopes. I had just gone through divorce. My ex-wife was in Sweden with my son. I'm here in a foreign country by myself. Luckily, I found a job in Singapore, and I moved over to Singapore, again a new country, and this time also without my ex-wife, without my son, standing on my own, basically looking at what should I do now. In this new job with EGN, I jumped straight in, keeping myself busy, working a lot, but I fall into some new bad habits when I lived in Singapore for the first time. We're talking in 2018. So here I gained a lot of weight quickly. I found that relaxing after work was to go to the bar, have some drinks, which perhaps you've seen many expats are doing when they move to Asia, because they don't have the family around them, they don't have friends. So that's what I did, and I quickly gained weight. I lost my health, and I think also the stress of drinking alcohol, while it relax you now, perhaps the next morning you're not feeling so good. Apart from the weight I gained, I also stopped exercising, and I basically started to give up hope inside me. I felt so sick, and I really had lost all hopes and all drive in me. I just was so depressed. I didn't know how I should be able to come out of this. Here's a picture of my left foot in March 2018. It was so swollen, and I went to see many doctors. They said it must be broken. They did x-rays. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. They did blood tests. Of course, my health was not good. My blood pressure was extremely high. My liver, my kidney was not good, but they couldn't find anything wrong with my foot. It was simply because I was so stressed, the body was making it swollen all over the place. I was even struggling to get on a shoe on this foot. So that's how bad I was in March 2018. At this point, I reached the lowest point of my life. I even wrote my will and my testament. I sent this to my son, I sent it to my parents, and I said, if I die, there's the insurance, here are my bank accounts, this is what you get. So that's a typical sign when someone is giving up on life. And I wasn't suicidal. I didn't have any suicidal thoughts. but I knew that I didn't have much longer to go. My health was going down so much and I was so depressed and I didn't see much hope. And then something happened. A colleague and friend of mine, Simon, committed suicide. I was working with him on a few assignments. He is a speaker like myself and he was talking about future of work. I was completely shocked, and so were all of us. We had no idea that he was suffering from depression and feeling lonely. In fact, he had just been to Mount Everest to fulfill one of his dreams, to climb up to the base camp of Mount Everest. He had a girlfriend which he loved, and he made posts on Facebook just before he took suicide that he had never been happier in his life. No one could understand what was going on. I was in such shock and I thought, what should I do now? What possibly can I help? How can I make sure that this story is told, that it doesn't happen to other people, to other project managers or executives that feel the pressure and keeping it for themselves, like I had done so long, and like in Simon's case, also obviously to the point where he couldn't even live with his pressure anymore. He had to kill himself. So that's when I started to launch a campaign, and on this picture you can see that I have already lost a lot of weight. I started to exercise. That was my way of dealing with the stress of knowing that my friend and colleague had killed himself. I started to exercise and I signed up for a race. Here I'm in Sweden just a few months later to compete in this race. And I started a campaign with the SOS, the Samaritans in Singapore. It's a charity that is creating awareness about suicide attempts, and they have a 24-hour hotline people can call if they have questions about this, because it's such a taboo topic in Asia, also in Singapore, that it need to have a hotline where you can call and get some help. So that's the journey, how I started this and raise money for the charity and raise awareness. So what is then loneliness? The loneliness that I was suffering from, and obviously I didn't speak to anyone about these issues, and the issues that then in the case of Simon, we felt both lonely, obviously disconnected. So let me ask you, and here let's launch a poll. I want to ask you, what is loneliness? What does it mean with loneliness? If you can make your pick in there. You can choose as many as you like. You don't have to pick just one. Anything you think resonate with you that you believe is loneliness. See someone click on an unpleasant emotional response to isolation. Yes. I see many are clicking on anxious feeling about the lack of connection, of communication with other beings. Yes. And then can be felt even when surrounded by other people. It is not having lots of people in your life. Yes. Okay. Excellent. There we go. So there is the result. So number one, yes, an unpleasant emotional response to perceived isolation. Exactly. And the key word there is perceived. It doesn't mean that you have to be isolated. It is that you perceive that you are. And number two there, anxious feelings about the lack of connection, of communication with other beings, that you're not able to feel that connection. And the next point, that it can be felt even when surrounded by other people. It is not having lots of people in your life. And this was the case with me when I was in Singapore. I was surrounded by colleagues and a lot of people, but I couldn't feel the connection. I felt different. I didn't have it inside me. I wasn't healthy enough to be able to connect with them emotionally. The next one, lacking high quality, meaningful, strong relationships. And this is so challenging, especially for men. We tend to have some people we know, but maybe not strong enough, who we have opened up and been honest with. Women are better than this, are better at this. They have typically a few strong relationships, people they can speak honestly and openly with. The last one, that lost the belongingness, could be with a family or a workplace. Yes, if you feel that you don't belong there, you feel a bit left out. When you feel people are talking around your back or you don't feel connected, then you feel lonely. So those were all correct answers actually. So thank you for filling them in. It's indeed correct. So let's then move forward to the next slide. So now we know what loneliness is. So that links us then into the topic of what is then executive loneliness? Now we define what loneliness is. What do we mean with executive loneliness? I was asked this on live radio in July last year. So when I was asked what is executive loneliness, I said it's lonely at the top. And you might have heard this term from long time before. It's not a new term, but it's basically what it means is that the higher you go up the pyramid of companies, the lonelier it gets. If you imagine that you are at the middle of a company, you have many managers perhaps at that level, but if you are the director or you're the chief or the principal of the project, who do you talk to? You don't have anyone at your level. Perhaps the people that you report to upwards is the owner or the board, and you cannot really tell them about your struggle, and if you're not feeling well. Or below you, you have your team. You cannot really talk to them openly about what's going on because you're supposed to be there to drive them and motivate them. So that is the challenge, how you can find yourself and feeling lonely at the top. And especially now when we're going through challenges out there, how many companies now, the owners are looking after the money. They tell the managing director, we need to cut costs, we need to do this and so on. And it's left with the managing director then to reduce the cost by terminating staff and taking all the decisions. But who is looking after the managing director? That is what I mean with executive loneliness and why it's lonely at the top. So let's look at some statistics then on depression, because indeed if loneliness is left untreated, it becomes chronic and can lead to depression. We know that about 5% of the people globally are depressed. If we look in Singapore, where I did a survey where I interviewed people for the book I'm writing, 30% of them say that they either have suffered or are suffering from depression. That's 6 times higher than the global average. So why is it so high in Singapore? We know that it's a city where the people are working long hours, it's competitive. Then we know also that 75% of the people in the world who need help don't actually seek help due to stigma surrounded of mental health, because people are terrified, because they worry people are going to think it's something wrong with them. We are not so scared to admit if our leg is broken or if we have some other problems with the body, but if it's the brain, we seem to feel that that is taboo. We don't want to talk about it, so people don't talk about this. In Singapore, the research I did for my book is almost consistent with the global numbers. So while the global numbers were 75, in Singapore I found out 82% of the executives here in Singapore don't want to talk about executive loneliness, depression, or what's going on with their bosses. That means they're keeping it for themselves. So can you imagine now when people are suffering and going through challenging times, they are not talking about it. And that is the danger. That is what I was suffering from, and that was what drove Simon to suicide, because he didn't tell anyone about what's going on. No one knew. So let me share with you a few other stories. So this is Evelyn. She is 50 years old. She's working and she has 2 children, both in university. At the moment, she finds herself outside of the workplace. She worked for one of the big accounting firms, and now due to the COVID crisis, doesn't have a job, and the job market is not there. She is extremely pressured and stressed now. She worried that she might have to take her children out from university because she is not sure if she can pay the fees. She feels like a bad mother, and she's under an enormous pressure and stress these days. I'm sure a few of you can resonate with this. Feel free to write your comments in the group chat if you have any comments or questions. We will stop later to take them as well. And here is Anders. Anders is a top achieving executive. He is a CEO now of a company. He was just promoted and he moved to the Middle East, where he lives in a big villa with a wife he loves. He drives a sports car, and he also even bought a sports car to the wife because they are cheap in the Middle East. However, he used to live in Bangkok, where he has all his friends, and now in his new city, he doesn't have any friends. He feels very isolated, away from families and friends, and despite having a big job, big salary, sports cars, a nice house, everything, he should have everything. That's at least what the most people think. But on the inside, he feels lonely. Then we have Pasha. Pasha is into his second relationship now. He divorced the first wife because she just couldn't handle his career. He was working too much, he said, and the relationship broke apart. Now in his new relationship, he promised himself and his new wife that he was going to balance work with a private life. It was going okay until in his last job they were putting too much pressure on him to work too much. He resigned and has another job. Now in the crisis, I spoke with him last week, it's worse than ever. His company is falling apart and he's not really sure if he's going to keep the job. So now also him having children, he's not really sure if he will keep the job, what's going to happen to the family. It seems like to him that he has to choose, either has a family or work. He cannot do both things. He has huge stress about this. Also in his situation now, he cannot talk to his company because they are making big losses and have big problems during the coming financial crisis. So that was a little bit of an introduction to the topic, and I just wanted to take a little bit of a quick break here. If everyone can take up the mobile phones, if you're not calling in on the mobile phones, then you can take out either your camera if you have an iPhone, or a QR barcode here, the QR scanner, and scan, because if you do that, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I promise I will accept all your requests to connect with me and reply to you. So that's what I just think we should take a second break so you can do that. And also to remind you that you can write questions in the chat box and reflections, which we will stop too soon. And so now it's really going to be also involving you a lot more moving forward. So that was the start of my story and sharing some news with you. So remember to take a breath. I know we are talking on a topic that is a bit challenging for people, and thanks for your patience to listen to me so far. So let me go through a few more slides before we're going to engage you further. So as we said, people are reluctant to talk about mental health openly, and especially suicide. When we talk about suicide, people almost get shaky just by hearing the word about it. But it is okay to talk about suicide, because if we don't talk about these things, then they will become even worse. We have to be strong enough to be able to talk about difficult topics within our families, companies, with our friends. And that is the message I want to send across today. So now a very difficult question. And the good thing is here, you can answer this question in a poll anonymously. I normally ask this inside the room, and I did that when I was in Yangon, invited also to speak at the Synopsium in January. So let's see if you know of someone who committed suicide. You can click yes, no, or if you prefer not to answer, that's also okay. You can also say so. Okay, great. We get a lot of answers here. If we can get 2-3 more, we can end the polling. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for answering that so honestly. So do you know someone who committed suicide? We have 41% say yes, 53% say no. So that's pretty consistent with the global average is that people know about 33%. So you're a little bit higher than the global average. But at least now when you're anonymous, the number is higher. When I asked this in January in Yangon in the Synopsium, there was only about 5 people in an audience of 400-500 that raised a hand, but that was again around because of the taboo. People don't want to be seen even to know it, but here you could answer it secretly and anonymously. So thanks for your honesty. So that just shows that there's so many people out there that sadly go this way of committing suicide. Almost half of you know it. So what are we going to do about this then? Well, the bottom line is we need to talk about it. So now into the topic also here about COVID-19. Is it likely to lead to increased suicide? Yes, we start seeing more and more of these articles. Here you can see now latest news, it's climbing. It's that breaking point. The poor people are killing themselves, but we also see business people start jumping off office buildings. And this is only the beginning. And this is where it's going if people are isolating themselves and not speaking up. So we know globally every 40 seconds someone dies of suicide. So mental health, we are in an epidemic with people suffering in isolation. That is what a charity in Singapore that working on suicide prevention said in 2019. What we mean with that is it's popping up epidemics here and there globally of people committing suicide. The NYPD in New York, the police, 10 suicides already in this year. That's massive. And in Australia, a lot of suicides, growing also in Myanmar, Thailand a lot. I wanted to ask you one more question also. So the common question is often, so who suffer most when it comes to loneliness and depression? Is it men? Is it women? So let's launch a poll here, the last poll for today, to get some feelings on you. So who experience more loneliness, men or women? Okay, great. Can I have one more? So looks like most think that men are suffering from more loneliness. Yes, we can end. So 56% think it's men, so suffer more from loneliness. And yes, this is a discussion where many people in different countries have different opinions, and it's very hard to find the statistics on this. But yes, it tends to be that women have a few more closer relationships, as we said before, so they have some connection, and they perhaps don't feel as lonely as men. But when it comes to depression, we know that women are suffering from more depression than men, at least in the statistics. But then again, if you have a few close friends as a female and you're telling your female friends that you're not feeling so good, they will perhaps take you to see the doctor. You get a medical checkup and therefore you're in the statistics. And there's more people than who see in the statistics that you're not so well. While the men who perhaps are more lonely, who don't talk to any friends, so they don't have no one who take them out of that dark side or the dark thinking and the dark mindset they're in, so they don't go to the doctor, so we not find out. But if we take it one step further, then what about suicides? Well, we know that actually it's more suicide attempts by women, but it's more men that succeed with the suicides because they use more heavy tactics such as guns and so on. But this is an ongoing topic, an ongoing discussion, but everyone is suffering. But indeed, the men tend to not speak up about it. And that is the key, as I said, that's the difference between why I'm alive today and why Simon is not, because I spoke up. So then, digital devices. This is an article that I got published recently when I was talking about digital transformation. Is it increasing executive isolation and loneliness? And my argument was, yes, it is, because you're writing more on devices and computers, laptops, you're chatting more, but when you do that, you don't really meet people face to face. You don't feel the human connection. That was at least one conclusion that I drew. Social media, you can choose who to block and you can connect with people only you want to. So then if we take it further, is COVID-19 increasing executive isolation? And this is a question you can please answer in the chat box if you believe there is increasing executive isolation. because obviously we have had the lockdowns, every country have had different measures. And the question is, how do we feel then when we cannot meet people and speak in person? So how do we then overcome executive loneliness? That is the most important question, and why we are connecting here this evening. And that is a question that we need to discuss and we need to share. So I will share with you first how I overcame it. I shared a picture earlier here where I was in Sweden, where I was coming for a race, where I started a campaign to raise money and awareness of suicide prevention. Well, just a few months later, I had completed a race where I actually ran a 3.8 kilometer, I cycled 180 and I ran a marathon. So from the picture which you saw a year and a half earlier, where I was so fat I could hardly walk, unfit, and I thought I was going to die, here I completed such a race. I worked every day with reading the best books, getting the best tips, eating the right food. I stopped consuming alcohol completely. For now, it's almost 2 years since I stopped consuming alcohol, and I'm trying to live a good life. But what happened then? Well, the difference is I spoke up. I met a new wife and I told her what's going on. I got a couple of friends. I signed up with a therapist, which I spoke through about my challenges, and I was telling the therapist what was going on. And for every person I started to be honest to, and I told about my struggle, the better I started to feel, and I started to heal, and I came myself together. So that is a little bit of my journey that I wanted to share with you, because it's so important to just speak up, because people love to help each other. Or if we just quiet and we go inside our brain by ourselves, then only bad things will happen, to the point where what happened in Simon's case, sadly, that he committed suicide. He was a lovable man. If he just spoken up, someone would have grabbed his hand and we would have helped him. So if you see here, instead of dying 2 years ago, I'm hoping for a long life, a positive life, where I talk to people, I feel connected with people, even if it's now a bit in lockdown in part of the world, but it's important to connect with each other like we do today, have honest conversations. So I belong to a lot of networks now where I have friends, and I feel great being a part of a community again. So that leads me to asking you the question, how would you overcome executive loneliness? So we will give you 5 minutes to go inside the breakout rooms, where we will divide you now in the rooms. You can discuss this between you and nominate a team leader to report back to us. How would you overcome executive loneliness? Would it be by eating well, sleeping well, or what would you do, especially now in times of COVID-19? So we give you 5 minutes now in your rooms, and then we're looking forward to hearing from you. So Donna, I think you need to go in and take picture in each room, right? So now it's 13 past, so 18 past we come back here. Yeah?
Hi, Nick.
Yes, hi.
Everyone is already back. I think we will discuss more
Okay,
in here, I guess.
let's have a discussion then. Welcome back then to the main room. So, how
Hi.
would you overcome executive loneliness? If you don't feel like talking, then you can write in the chat box. Give us some, what would you do? Eat well, sleep well, connect with friends, or you can raise your hand also by inside here in the participant, you can raise your hand and you can speak up, or you can unmute yourself and say if you can share with us, how would you overcome executive loneliness? Anyone that is brave to share anything?
Hi, this is Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Hello. I was in a breakout room with 4 people, but only 2 of us participated. Their microphones were off, or so we didn't get any input. But the 2 of us, we had similar type of managing our loneliness. We divide our time through, work, family, friends, leisure time. For me, it's been, because I've been struggling with this, I haven't focused too much on work, because work right now is really depressing. So I keep in touch with a lot of my friends. I keep in touch with my coworkers through Facebook and Messenger, and with my friends, basically, and we share a lot of information, what's going on, mostly about mostly talking about eating, the situation, and what worries us, where can I find this, that, when everything is closed. And we passed. I've been in self quarantine per se, or this is my 34th day that I have to work. Although I go to the office every couple of days just to check on things.
Okay.
So that's how we manage.
Yeah, that's great, Alan. And you're right. And I think one key thing there that you said is when work is not going well, you focus on something else. And that is the key, where it's switching your focus from focusing on something that is not so good to the positive side, and you're connecting with people. So thanks for sharing, Alan. You're indeed doing all the right things there. And I see that Jason is way, yes?
I said thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan. And Jason, yes, please share with us.
And thank you for sharing, Ellen. In our group, one of us was saying how she was reading and walking out and sleeping and eating well during during this time. So I admire her for that. But in my case, I recently adopted 2 little kittens.
Oh.
And I have been spending time with them, feeding them, playing with them, and I think it's a good way to be with someone if you don't have any immediate family with you. And it's a good exercise for me to learn responsibility and to be close with someone. And they've been helping me. So yeah, I would recommend anyone to adopt pets.
That's great.
That's my tip.
No, that's a great share, and indeed animals can keep us very happy, and we can feel the connection and something to care for. Wonderful share, Jason. Thank you so much. And I see we have, thank you. I see we have some more people here saying, Abdul, say listening to music. Abdul, can you share with us?
And I think when you're, when you're low, lonely, depressing, the best thing is to meditate, then to listen to music. That's a very good thing, just you lie down, listen to music with a good sound system. That's the most important thing. And then the second thing is, as I said, meditate. It would give you relaxing and, which helps you. And the third thing is that you talk to family, because this makes a lot of difference, especially the music, when you're all alone and you just soothe yourself with the music. So for me, the main thing is the music and meditation. These are the 2 most important things where you are on your own. And you just figure out that what to do next, how to do it. And also that also make you strong, because you think that what are your strengths, and then the main thing is that this phase is temporary, because it's going to do, and you take this, embrace it with a smile. So that's my main thing is, lonely, just all alone, music and meditation. These are the two most stronger things which I want to have.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Abdul. And then Tin So, do you have something to share with us?
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. I like the meditation, even stressful or loneliness, and then another thing is playing with children and watching together their cartoon movie, and then so it makes me release stress, and also it makes friends, and we connect together, so it can reduce our feeling loneliness. So I can suggest you, if you have children, you can play with them, and then listening to their voice, and watching their how do you call the skills, and then yeah, we can play together with children. And also the meditation, breathing exercise. When you make the breathing exercise, even the 10 minutes, is you cannot feel loneliness, because you can see your breathe in and out, and then so that you will refresh your mind, and then that meditation and the concentration made you feeling better. Yeah, that's from my side.
Thank you so much for sharing. And who's next? Someone else want to share something positive? Just you can unmute yourself and share. We have Kim Kin here saying keeping in touch with friends. Do you want to expand on that, Kim Kin? I'm aware that not everyone might have the microphone with them. So then we have David says yoga and cooking. Do you want to unmute yourself and share something, David? Yoga and cooking, David said, and spring cleaning. Excellent. Cleaning. How many people I've seen done cleaning now? David, do you want to expand on this? I can see David was unmuted for a second, but we couldn't hear him. While we're waiting for him, I can say I've seen on social media some of my friends, they've been doing all the wardrobes, they've been cleaning the garage. Yeah, so indeed cleaning is great. And cooking, I've seen so many people cooking. My wife also, I know she's cooking cookies. In fact, I have a lot of cookies here, right here on my desk. You can see a lot of cookies here. So cooking, that works. Anything to keep us occupied, to not think about the negatives. Then we have Dede. Dede, do you want to share with us?
For me, it's like I'm not focusing on specific activity. Most of the time, I try myself to occupy with some activities. Maybe sometimes it's walk, and maybe sometimes I play games, watching movie, because my personality is something like if I feel a bit lonely, it can lead to a depression. So to overcome this, I used to occupy my time with different things for the whole day.
That's great. Thank you, Dede. And then I see here we have also who wanted to share with us perhaps Wuyi Tant. Do I say it correctly? W-U-I-T. W-Y-E-E. Otherwise, we have. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. Can you share with us?
Yeah, I would like to know more about on the topic. The topic is how the company, concern with the company suffering, the employer suffering. So I would like to know more about on that.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's say that you are the boss of a factory. Let's say that you currently have 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
and your owners are based in America, and everything has been going well for your company for the last 15 years. You have not been able to, you haven't had to make any cuts. The staff are good friends. They brought in the families. It works. It feels like a close family. You're all very connected. Suddenly now the business goes down, and the company owners from America is telling the boss of this manufacturing business, we need to cut costs. We need to cut cost with 50%. So then you then, as in charge of this factory, you work with the finance team, you see how can we reduce 50% cost. Well, we can try to negotiate for the rent to come down, but we need also to reduce staff. So perhaps you need to lay off 300 staff, including some of the senior managers. So then you, as the managing director in charge of this manufacturing plant, have all the responsibility on the ground because the owners are overseas in America. They just give you the instruction, this is how much you need to cut. You as the MD then need to make all these cuts, letting go of people that you have been working with, that you have hired and trained and built up for many, many years. And you have to personally, or through your team, deliver the message to these people who now will lose their jobs, and they will come home sad and to their families because they lost the income. And that is the very, very lonely decision for a boss to make if you're in that position. And that is what many, many senior executives now I speak with. And here in Singapore, as you might know, it's tend to be the regional hub where they have branches in Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, and so on. And they then looking at which countries, where should we cut costs and so on. And that is what many companies are going through. And it's a terrible exercise for someone who's a senior executive to go through this, and you basically have to do it by yourself because there's no one at your level. You are the boss, you're in charge of this. Did I answer your question? Yeah. So that is I see you are muted. I am, yeah, you're
decision, right? When you comes to that situation. Yeah. So now I think like we are facing that now. Yeah. I mean, most of the companies and some of the, I mean, not most, some company and some organization, they are start to thinking about the kind of, because they don't have any choice on that. Yeah.
This is what's happening, and this is what we are seeing out there now. And again, just like we said before, the most important is that we keep talking about it. And if you are then the boss, what should you do in that situation? What can you do? Well, you need to belong to a professional network, for example. You need to belong to an organization where you can talk to other people who are then, so if you're the boss of a manufacturing plant, you should have a network of other people who have similar roles, so you can talk to them about how would they handle this situation. Because perhaps you cannot bring home this challenge to your wife or your husband or your family. They will perhaps not know, and they cannot feel and understand what's going on. But you need to have other people, perhaps not even your friends know, but some people at your level. That is what I mean with belonging to a professional network, that you should have some people to look for guidance. And do we have anyone else here to ask any questions? It's approaching 1 hour now, but we can have one more or two more questions if anyone have something to ask. We can continue an informal question and answer after, but I thought we wanted to hear your feedback, so I'm just sharing here if you can scan this one also to let us know what you felt about today, because just like everyone, we are just moving online now with webinars. So for me also, I have done this talk many times in real, but this is the first time I've done it as a webinar. So I want to obviously thank you, all of you, for attending today, for asking great questions and for helping with the polls. And I see some questions come in here, so I will take them. Have you ever think or committed suicide by myself? No, I haven't. I have felt very depressed, sad, and I have understood that my health was going down so much that I thought I was going to die, but I didn't think about committing suicide. Luckily, I didn't have that. So I guess I had some hope or some spark inside me, perhaps something built up or as a child, that I had some belongingness inside me, if it can be to God or to other people or to my family. So I had some safety net, I think, something inside me that didn't make me feel about suicidal. But thanks for asking that question. Anyone else have any question? You can write in the room there. We have the chat box open if anyone else. A last question. Otherwise, I will hand over back to Andreas, and thank you so much for all the great questions. I know it's a sensitive topic, so many people are not asking questions, but you've been great. Thank you so much. Andreas, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, yourself. Really appreciate it. I mean, personally, I learned several things also listening to you. I mean, I've been in Asia for the last 15 years, Shanghai, the last 8 years in Myanmar. So I can really resonate with what you're saying in terms of finding people you can talk to. Like I say, people understand your situation, and especially daring to speak up. So I think it's, I find it very valuable to hear you speaking also. And I think having this webinar with you, we also want everyone else to know that give us your feedback. If you think this is something you want to have more, tell us. We're happy to bring you together more often, sharing things on a regular basis. This is a little bit different from skills building, which we normally do, but we see this as a very important part in terms of, well, developing yourself and staying motivated. So thank you again, Nick. Really appreciate you for doing this. This is our weekly webinar. So I also want to take the opportunity to introduce next week, in fact. So next week, we will go back to another topic. Next week, we will talk about customer experience. So we will not focus on the executives, but instead we focus on the customers. Really how to keep your customers happy, how to create a customer experience, why it's important to be proactive about your customers and clients, and how a customer experience can continue to improve your products and services. Also a 1 hour webinar introduction. We will send it out in a few days. But yeah, so stay tuned. Every week we try to get a new topic up. So please let us know if there's any topic you think will be useful for you. And really take the opportunity to share your opinion and in the feedback form. We love to hear from you, love to hear what you think. And yeah, that's pretty much all from us. I think thank you all so much for joining this webinar, sharing. It's great to hear your comments and your opinions, all the comments in the chat box. So thank you, Nick. Thank you, Donna, Nuno, and everyone. Thank you all for joining tonight. See you next week.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening. Play with the dog, cat, singing, yoga,
Thank you.
music. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.